Get your paychecks up to 2 days faster with Early Pay. True story. Welcome to Huntington.
Okay, welcome. Saeed Khan is traveling, Nancy's overseas, and so I am, by default, the host today, and I'm excited. We've got really, and I don't say this lightly, we have a great group. We've got attorney Tiffany Ellis. Welcome, Tiffany. Thanks for doing this.
Glad to be here representing the other chromosome.
That's right. We've got ML Elrick, a columnist for the Detroit Free Press, Pulitzer Prize winner. And we've got Charlie LeDuff, a man of many hats. He's the host of the No BS News Hour, also a Pulitzer Prize winner, former New York Times reporter. And he is now a columnist with the Detroit News and a former columnist with Deadline Detroit. Welcome, Charlie. Thanks for doing this. And we're going to have to get a Coney update, too. What's going on over in that crazy corner?
Okay, you got it, man. I got the scoop.
And then we've got Bill Seikaly, who's an attorney who's done a lot of great work in the city. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Alan. And I note that Charlie's never had me on his show. Apparently, it's because my initials are BS, and he has a no BS. Never mind.
Hey, Bill.
Okay.
Bill, what have you been eating? Your hair?
Oh.
Okay, here we go. So before we get started,
who's schmuck of the week? Let me change my schmuck of the week. Anti-bald guys. Yes. Go ahead.
Let's get a little update on the corner of Michigan and over on Michigan Avenue there. What's going on with the Coneys? Is Lafayette open? And what happened? I see Grace had a little problem there at American Coney Island.
No, Lafayette's not open. It's not going to be open for a while. It's more than just, some vermin. It's structural. They got to rebuild. The floor was collapsing. So that, I guess, won't be open for at least another month. It looks like to me. In terms of the crime downtown, yeah, somebody came by the American Coney Island yesterday about 5:30 a.m. They went on a crime spree ripping off cash registers downtown. Right? Just broke in, took an empty cash register, threw it in a stolen car and took off. What's interesting is everybody should know, like, the false narrative of this city. There are no police cruisers assigned to the entire downtown of Detroit from 11 o'clock until 7 in the morning, Monday through Thursday. There are no police.
Charlie, why do you say everyone should know? I'm not sure I want criminals knowing that, but.
Well, you should know, because if you're not a criminal, the criminals already do know it. I'm talking to a couple of lawyers.
Well, thank goodness we have all those surveillance cameras down there and green lights, because that'll surely make a difference.
Right. Okay, Charlie has frozen here, but so we'll take. I was gonna. Yeah. So we're gonna. And we've got a late comer here. We've got Greg Bowens. Welcome, Greg.
Hello.
A
Greg,
columnist for Deadline Detroit, a public relations specialist. Welcome, Greg. Greg has his own time entry. He likes to have a separate entry into the group.
Wow! Ta-da!
Hey,
presto! Greg Bowens is here.
Anyways, when we on freeze, Charlie, I did have one more question I wanted to ask him about how that's impacted the American Coney Island, but whether Lafayette's going to be able to get their business back. But Charlie will be back hopefully. But anyways, in the meantime, the first subject I want to talk about is Donald Trump and all his mounting legal woes. And before we do, I've got a little video I'm going to play here.
Of the day, starting with the only ex-president who spends more time with his lawyers than his grandkids, Donald Jurassic Trump. Now, it turns out the former president is somehow in more legal trouble than ever. And we're going to find out why in another installment of America's Most Tremendously Wanted.
All right. So speaking of legal woes, so we have the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, has filed this civil action. And then we have the documents down in Florida where the judge, it seems like the master is messing with Trump by telling the lawyers, I need you to file in court and answer whether you think that the FBI planted documents down there or whether they're lying about the documents. Who wants to weigh in first on this?
Me.
All right, Greg. Okay.
No, hey,
well, it's more appropriate for a PR person to do it than a lawyer because it's definitely a PR issue more than it's a legal issue.
That's right. I'm a lawyer in the court of public opinion.
But
Bill, you go ahead. You are a lawyer.
No, I'm serious. I'm absolutely serious, Greg. I think it's more appropriate for you to address it because the legal principles here aren't complicated. They are. Trump is simply playing the PR game. So, and that's why his lawyers are in trouble.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, it's case after case after case that allows for it to wear on the public consciousness after a while, the national consciousness, so that it makes it hard for people who even, you know, may have still sort of like Trump go like, Jesus Christ, this guy, every time I turn around, there's something new. And they look for an alternative that doesn't have the same kind of baggage. But when it comes to this, I mean, and because there have been so many cases, a new case becomes just part of the noise. I mean, this guy has more cases against him than a mafia don in the 80s.
Well, let me ask you guys.
In some ways, I think you're right, Greg, but I think there's a difference here with the New York Attorney General's case. You know, this is the result of a 3-year investigation. It's fundamentally about his business dealing and, you know, how he overinflated the cost of his properties over many, many, many years, defrauding the government and all of the other taxpayers of what should have been going to everyone's benefit. So I think that this case is a little bit different. It maybe in the noise out there to the public, it'll blend in, but I think in reality, the issues are totally different.
But the New York Times, Forbes magazine, Business Week magazine, they were all reporting years ago that Trump has been inflating the numbers on his properties. And remember how he would call up Forbes and basically, you know, lie to them about his property so that he could be on the list of Forbes top billionaires and millionaires and all that stuff. So I don't know. I mean, this may be the first time that he's being criminally charged in a New York court for it. But in terms of the court of public opinion,
it's civil.
It's a civil case, not a criminal case.
Okay, civilly, but this is something that is well known. This is not a new thing in relationship to people thinking or being exposed to him lying about his wealth and his properties.
Hey, Charlie, let me ask you. We've got all these fronts down in Georgia. We've got investigations in D.C. We've got investigations in New York. Is it overkill? Is there going to be a backlash from too many cases, or how do you see it?
I be honest with you, I don't pay much attention anymore. I mean, it trumps yesterday's news, and we want them to be today's news. And there are much bigger issues than whether Trump inflated his wealth or, you know, election fraud. That's the past.
But is there much bigger news than 34% of the population still supports him enough that it makes a difference in virtually every Republican primary election?
Well, that's the country, man. I don't judge it. I live in it. You know, that's all.
Well, you say it's yesterday's news. The fact that he influences who gets nominated in the Republican Party at virtually every level is today's news, in my opinion.
Well, that's because there's like a third of the country's ignored and another 40%'s ignored, but the Democratic Party hasn't splintered, which is its comeuppance at some point, right? It's just like the Republicans. You have the working people and the poor, and you have the elite, and it's the same with the Republicans. And Trump caught on to it. If we're looking at Trump inflating his wealth, is anybody going to raise the question? The banks gave the loans. Did they do their due diligence? Did you check the square footage? You know what I mean? They ended up signing off on it. So I'm looking at 2024. That's what I got. I'm looking about 45 days from now to see what the midterms shake out. And you're going to see that the Republicans are fielding such a slate of bozos that everything's going wrong in the country and there's going to be no red wave. So if you say Trump really influences a lot of things, does he? Seems to me he picks the winners, or he picks, anytime he doesn't pick an incumbent, he loses. He lost in Georgia. I mean, did he really make Tudor Dixon here? No.
On this, we agree. Look, we used to agree about how close the Democrats and Republicans are. The Republican Party doesn't exist as a party anymore. It's the Trump Party, and they're not the same as the Democrats. They're not the same as the former Republicans. So it is different today than it was. And I think that the only way that the Trump Party will end, what used to be called the Republican Party, will end what they're doing is for there to be a blue wave. But there is nothing remotely similar between the current Republican Party and the current Democratic Party. Whatever faults you see with the Democratic Party, and we share some of those views, they are not the Trump Party. They're not trying to, they're not election deniers. They're not trying to destroy the present system and, in my opinion, impose their person as a, to refer to the Queen, as a monarch. They're not the same, Charlie. This is different.
I don't think I said that, Bill. Actually,
you said the Democratic Party and the Republican Party
they have similar
were the same.
Issues.
They're not
they have
the same.
Similar issues, which in this society you can't have two overarching parties. It just doesn't work. I mean, if you look at urban America, right? If you look at suburban America, if you look at Manhattan, they can't represent all of us. In the end, it is, to me, a game. Every cycle, okay, the Republicans take over, and then the Democrats get it. We all get crumbs. Our jobs go away. Our money's worthless. Yeah, I don't know what the future is. All I know is I have a kid, and I'm worried for her, and I think we all agree on that.
And Charlie, I think you're right. More than anything else,
system, I agree.
Yeah, ML.
More than anything else in this election cycle, Charlie, I think that you're right. Is that voters are waking up with the Dobbs decision. Oh, am I frozen now?
You are frozen.
You're still. We can hear you.
But not
You
like
can
the
hear
movie.
me, but you can't see me. Let me see if I can fix
Oh,
that.
okay.
Oh, no.
Well, I think it'll.
What a great
Words, on this, your words are more important than your appearance.
Well, I'll just go ahead and make this point, then sign out and back in. Voters see that elections make a difference. The Supreme Court overturned decades and decades of precedent that will affect people for, the rest of our lifetimes, and certainly probably our children's. And so I think that we're going to see different voters this year. It does matter. And on that note, I'm going to try to fix this and come back.
Okay, ML. Let's hear what impact do you think that is Trump's yesterday's news, or is he still every bit relevant in this election?
No, I think he's very relevant. I think he may be the number one most relevant issue that voters are going to make a decision on, from the local level all the way to the federal level. But I think his legal strategy is pretty simple. He just needs to get some Republican senators on the jury, and he can do whatever the hell he wants.
I'm always reminded of Admiral Poindexter and the other guy, Colonel, what was his name? What's his face? When they were
Oliver North?
Yeah, Oliver North.
Good one.
And how, like, the Washington Post had written a story about their trials, and they profiled one of the jurors who was just like a young kid, black kid, who was worlds away from Oliver North, deciding on what's going on. And I look forward to that similar kind of thing happening when it comes to Trump. I don't think that, the things that, whenever there's a crime, that's always yesterday's news. It's always, because it happened yesterday by the time you get to court. But the influence and the impact of the shenanigans that go on remain, and they must be addressed. And so, I joke sometimes and I say, wow, a lot of white folks are feeling the pinch. Well, welcome to the black people's world, where you're not getting a fair shake, where your rates aren't the same, and where life just doesn't work out the same way for you, even if you do all the same stuff. And we have that kind of thing happening here in Detroit. There used to be a time where if you were young, and particularly if you were black, you go to college, you stay out of trouble, and you get a degree, and you could get a job. Well, guess what? That same kind of thing isn't happening here to the same degree that it can happen for you in another city. And we've got all this growth around us. And so, you know, I think that we need to hold people to account. And I think that the differences between the party are not so much reflective as it is how the system is failing us on lots of different levels. And a lot of that has to do with the way that we implement capitalism in our society.
Okay.
Well, hey guys,
ahead,
I'm back.
Tiffany.
Can I make one more
Welcome
point
back.
that I wanted to make before I got froze there? And I warn all of you that since Charlie and I both froze, you might be next. So
wow. Yeah.
Don't
look down on these.
Alan's pulling the switches. It's up to
watch
you.
the facial expressions.
Don't look down on these guys because they're frozen, because you can.
No, not at all. But on the point of whether, you know, Trump is yesterday's news or not, you know, the lasting impact of Trump goes so deep in this country when we're talking about state legislatures, particularly in light of these U.S. Supreme Court decisions. You know, we've just gone through redistricting in most of the states following the census. Not every state followed a nonpartisan system like Michigan did. You know, for example, Florida, where we've got a Trumpian legislature that actually gave DeSantis $12 million for his shenanigans to like fly people to Martha's Vineyards. These are the sorts of effects of Trumpism that we're going to continue to see. And until there's some accountability, hopefully through suits like the attorney generals or the DOJs, you know, folks are going to continue to think it's okay because that's the reality of what we're living in state legislative politics.
You know, it's interesting that Jared Kushner has criticized DeSantis. He was on Fox News and he criticized him for sending the Venezuelans up to Martha's Vineyard, which is interesting, which makes me wonder, is he telling Ivanka, hey, it's time for us to sort of resurrect ourselves and sort of rehabilitate ourselves in the eyes of the public? Is that possible?
Are you?
No, it just means he has a place on Martha's Vineyard.
What'd you say?
Alan, I want to know, did you use those terms intentionally? I mean, did you see resurrection? Did you see Jared's other statement that the reason he exercises so much and stays in such good shape is that he believes that his generation will either live forever or be the last generation to die?
Wow.
Jared,
well, I did not know that. So before we go on to the local, we're going to come into Michigan, which I think there's a lot of really fascinating races. But I am also very fascinated with the Coney corner. And here's a question that somebody has for Charlie. It says, if Lafayette is closed, why isn't American Coney Island closed? They're close to each other. And so answer that and tell me, how has business impacted American Coney Island since Lafayette's been closed?
Well, first of all, Tiffany, remind me, because I'd love to get back to the Dobbs decision and what it is we're looking at. Look, I'm just the maintenance guy at American Coney Island, so I don't discuss their receipts or their business. But look, the owner of American, we all know her, Grace Carroll, puts a lot of money and effort into keeping the place clean and kept up, and the HVAC working, the foundations. So yeah, there's a wall. We make sure nothing comes through the wall. And as everybody knows, the city, when they busted Lafayette, they came into American. They come in all the time down there because they're iconic. There's no health violations. There's no vermin. There's no leaking pipes. You got to put money in and respect the people that you serve. And so that's a human being that respects the greater community. You know, like Anthony Bourdain said, if you look at Lafayette, if that's what they're showing you, imagine what they're not showing you. Right? You go into American, you see the floors are clean, the windows are clean. During COVID, we scrubbed the ceiling. It's because American is old and it's run by a reputable person, and then she's not going to put up with that. And there's a lot of us that put our hours in to make sure that that's correct.
Sure.
You know, the foundations in all those old buildings down there have been around for more than 100 years.
Yes, sir.
Are you saying that the foundation, when you go in the basement of American Coney Island, it looks like upstairs?
It doesn't leak. It was great when the inspector came in and goes, "Wow, it's dry," and I take a lot of pride because I do the foundational work.
All right.
I seal the building. So when it leaks, we fix it.
Okay.
We don't watch it gather, water for 6 years and mold. No. You fix it.
Charlie built the wall, but Lafayette paid for it.
Charlie built the wall.
All right. So, Charlie, did you want to get hit on the Dobbs?
Yeah, real quick. I mean, we're talking about Trump, but here's my take as a reporter talking to a wide swath of people. What do we got in Michigan? The no complete restrictions, right? The 1931 law. And then what do we get on the other side? Absolutely no restrictions. None, right? 9 months if you feel like it. My 12-year-old, I don't have to be notified if she's going to get an abortion. Most of us, most people I talk to, we like it kind of how it is right now. Some sort of viability, right? Parental notification, no vacuuming the head off at 9 months. That's what we want. But these parties have driven us to extremes, and we're not extreme. Well, read the shake your head. What does that referendum say? You don't even have to.
No, I'm not.
I'm saying this is we wouldn't.
Let's Tiffany and then Bill.
We wouldn't be in this situation. We were in a place of moderation in most states with parental notification, with decades of precedent that was upheld by a just Supreme Court.
Agreed.
Once we got these partisans onto the Supreme Court that lied to get there, by the way, for this one single issue that has dominated the political sphere in our country for far too long, that is how we've gotten to this position.
Okay, agreed. But what we've been given is an all or nothing.
That's not true, Charlie. That's not true.
Absolutely
that is not true. You
true?
cannot be a nail tech and perform an abortion under the changes in this Constitution. That is what you're saying is not true. It's all or nothing.
Do you know what a healthcare professional is by law in Michigan? That's what the referendum says, dude. So
but a healthcare professional by law performing medical procedures is licensed by the state. You have to be a doctor.
It doesn't say licensed physician.
It doesn't matter what it says. It doesn't eliminate every law that's on the books.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that somebody who's not a physician who does surgery is violating a different statute that's still going to be there. But Charlie, why can somebody please explain to me? And I'm a little surprised that Tiffany didn't take this position, but I'm sure I'm going to win her over with this one. Can somebody please explain to me why this isn't a medical decision between a woman and her doctor?
It absolutely is.
What the hell is anybody doing in this other than that? And I talked to a few people, Charlie. Can somebody tell me if there's a physician out there that does 9 months abortion?
I don't know, Bill.
I don't believe that there is.
Can I fact check for a second here? I'm just going to fact check real quick because Michigan Legislature Section 333-26283, healthcare professional means an individual licensed or otherwise authorized to practice medicine. So there is a definition under state law of what a healthcare professional
is. The current law says physician. This referendum, since it's going to be in the Constitution, should be more specific.
You're confusing me. I thought she just you asked what a healthcare professional was. She told you, and now you're switching and saying, but it says physician. Before a second ago, you were saying it doesn't say physician.
Greg, physician makes it unclear.
That's not, the current law says physician. This one says healthcare professional.
You guys are talking about two different laws.
Is a physician.
You guys are talking about two different laws, guys. You guys are talking about two different laws. But tell me why it makes a difference. Where does the law allow a nurse to do a surgical procedure?
Well, let me say this. Instead of getting bogged down in this, why, as a father of a 15-year-old girl, would I not be notified?
Wait, we're bogged down in this because you brought it up.
Well, okay,
you're funny, man. Why get bogged? You bring us into this, and then you say, "Why get bogged down in this?" I don't understand.
You have a daughter that they're asking you to vote for. Like, my daughter can't vote. I can't have children. So I asked my daughter what it is you want. Right? My daughter is like very liberal. She's of the 15-year-old crowd. What do you want?
Well, Daddy, I want a new car. I want a brand new.
Is the only person on this panel with is the only person on this panel with a uterus and the actual person that would have to make a decision like this. I would say I don't want the government to tell me what to do. And I don't want you as and I'm frozen again, but I'm going to keep talking because I assume you guys can hear me.
We can hear you.
I don't want you or anybody that's not my doctor and not me to make a decision about what I can or cannot do with my future and my body. And that is the bottom line.
Well, I'm talking about the kids. So,
well, and the kids, quite frankly, Charlie, with all due respect, the kids are always in different situations. Not every kid is going to be in a situation where they have a loving parental household around them that are able to talk to them.
That's fine.
Through decisions like that. And so
terrific.
There are laws on the books here in Michigan.
That's where we go our separate ways.
Well, and you know what? For a kid to go, for somebody under 18 to get an abortion in this state, up until this point, they've had to go in front of a judge in order to get an order to go forward. It is not something that is taken lightly. It is not something like you can go to the mall and pierce your ears like it's Claire's.
You can, as I read this legislation.
That is absolutely not true.
Plus, it's not just about abortion,
is it?
It's not just about abortion, this referendum. It's also about sexual reassignation. Like if a boy wants to have a vasectomy because he heard if you get one, you don't get girls pregnant, and he's 14, I'm not to be notified. And yet my dentist has notified me about
no. You're either drinking the Kool-Aid or you're making it up intentionally.
Yeah, this is
all wrong.
Talking about.
There is a law that says.
I read it. This law
Charlie, you know me better than to make these accusations. Hold on, Greg, give me a second. Give me a second, guys. Charlie, you know me better than this. You know that I've read the law. And you know that I don't take this stuff lightly. There's a law on the books that doesn't have anything to do with anything that requires parental notification for any medical procedure. This doesn't eliminate that law. It doesn't eliminate it.
Bill,
Charlie, did you read that law?
Dude, if this isn't the Constitution, it would supersede whatever law you're referring to. It would. Read it. It's not a good piece. I'm saying again, look, I'm pro-choice for you. I am. I'm pro-choice for you. I demand better legislation than this. I think what we're getting with this is status quo.
So Charlie, it's okay with you if we go back to the 1931 legislation banning everything. Well, that is what is likely to happen.
Man. I didn't say that. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants some draconian.
I think Tudor Dixon wants that.
Yeah, well, that's what you're gonna get if this thing doesn't pass. That's exactly what you're gonna get.
Why don't we go back and do something more reasonable before we can't change when we're voting on something we don't know?
Well, no, we know. You're over there making up shit.
I'm not making up anything.
We're only doing this because
I'm making up anything.
All right.
As an attorney,
I've got to ask the penultimate question. Charlie, are you going to vote against this?
Look, man, I don't know. Because, look, I told you, this 1931 law is outrageous. Nobody supports that. Like 1 out of 10 people support that. I wouldn't be one of them. I want something solid, safe, and where I, as the parent, understand what's going on with my child. Is that too much to ask? Do I sound like a radical? Because if you think
Charlie, wait a minute. I just got done telling you that there is a law on the book. If your daughter breaks her legs, she's in a car accident, breaks her leg, you going to get a phone call? Of course you are.
I should, yeah.
Yeah. So the law that's on the books will apply when she's going to have a surgery.
What if I said
unless
this,
she goes and gets a court order?
What if I say this? If this referendum removes that, okay, which supersedes the other, the law on the books or the amendment to the Constitution? Because as I read it,
the current laws
are not. But you're buying the advertising on TV that is true. They do not contradict one another. There is no inherent contradiction in those laws. You're right. The Constitution supersedes a statute when there is a conflict. There's no conflict here.
And that,
no conflict
on Bill's point, and Charlie, I want to be careful here because this is a lot of misinformation, and I would take some pizza too, ML, but there's a lot of misinformation here. And after this, I'm happy to send you the laws and show you why it doesn't conflict, because it is important that people really understand that the messaging that Republicans and anti-choice folks are putting out is flat out wrong.
I haven't seen any of it. All I did was read it, make a few. You both know, Bill and Tiffany, you're lawyers. Nothing's settled. Everything goes to court.
Okay. You know what, Charlie? You're one of the smartest, coolest people that I know. But sometimes you just say shit to be provocative.
No,
just to be provocative,
Bill,
man.
Why would you do that, man?
Because that's what you're doing here. I said sometimes, not all the time. I'm saying right here. You have people who are licensed professionals, legal scholars with JDs telling you the law, and you're looking at them and saying, "Yeah, I hear you, but."
Well,
come on, man.
And I respect everybody, but they're not the only people with JDs I've spoken with. See, why are you trying to make me some fucking right-wing lunatic?
I didn't say you were a right-wing lunatic. I said you were being provocative on this issue.
I never heard Greg say anything about right-wing. Lunatic, perhaps, but never right-wing.
All right, let's go now.
We've had some lunatic times together, but this isn't one of them.
Pro-choice for you.
Yeah,
right?
let's
I'm pro-choice
a little.
for you. That's all.
Okay,
That's
a little segue here into the Michigan races, which let's go first to the Gretchen Whitmer Tudor Dixon race, where all I'm seeing is the Whitmer is primarily pushing on the whole abortion issue. The Tudor Dixon commercials are not very impressive. She's down by, I believe it was 16 points in the latest Free Press poll. Is the race over, and is Tudor Dixon got any shot, or is she just?
It's not.
Where did you guys get your glasses from, ML and Charlie? I like those.
All right, all right, ML. We haven't heard from you in a little bit. What do you think? Is the race, as a political columnist, is the race over, or
she ain't got no money?
Is that what it is?
I think she's also pushing an issue. She's got two things that she can't overcome. She thinks that the 1931 abortion law should be the law of the land, very unpopular. And she's still riding the Trump train. And I think that train stops at the primary. And after that, you got to get on something a little bigger. And he's coming to town. She's going to be with him. I don't see her broadening her base. And I think Whitmer is as vulnerable as any Democratic governor we've ever had. And she is rolling.
I wouldn't take it.
I would really object to anybody talking about.
I said the same thing about Jim Blanchard in 1990. So people still got to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I object to anybody saying it's over because I was around when Engler got elected and have never gotten over it. I still have PTSD over that election.
So, you know, we all live through that.
But more importantly, and not PTSD. More importantly, the reason that that election is so important is because it's going to drive the ticket down, the down ticket. It is critical that there be a major change if we're going to deal with what happened to Pete Meyer, who's not a guy who I would generally support. It's not like I was a big Peter Meyer fan. But if we're going to deal with the Trump issue in this state, then not only does she need a landslide, but she needs to help. She needs to have some coattails and make sure that the Trump candidates that are down ticket don't get elected.
Well, I think we have, at least in the top races there, we have for Attorney General Dana Nessel. The Free Press poll, I think, came out today saying she leads Matt DePerno 48-39, and I think there's a person who's beatable. If the Republicans had put up Tom Leonard instead of Matt DePerno, I think they would have had a much better shot.
Would they have allowed Leonard to come into the convention?
Yeah, he was.
Ask ML, he was there.
and Christina Caramo is behind Jocelyn Benson 51-37. Now the races that are much closer is Alyssa Slotkin race. That's a little closer. But the last poll that we actually had out, she was ahead, I think, by 18 points. And I think is abortion really? Is it all about abortion this time, or?
I think a lot of it's about abortion at the state level, but I will just say this, what's going to happen in the next 47 days is what we're down to before Election Day. We have 47 days left. TV has just started hitting today. Absentee ballots are going to start to go out on the 29th. Mm-hmm. This is when we're going to start to see all of the things start. The messaging is coming. The super PAC money is coming. This is where the rubber is really going to hit the road with these elections. But I will just say this on just a side note. I heard one of Alyssa Slotkin's new ads this week, and it has to be one of my favorite political ads that I've ever heard of all time. When have you heard somebody on the radio who's running for Congress be described as a badass and them paying for it themselves? It's just, I love that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you this: if you look at the numbers in the primaries, what you will find is that anytime that there was a woman going head to head with a man, the woman won in every primary race, and that is a direct result of the influence of Roe. And I think you're going to see that repeated here. Now, if it was split between, like in the 13th where you had 3 women running and a bunch of guys running, they split that vote. But there were women who were getting bumps in the primary who had this, just what ML was talking about: no money, no way to talk to people. But folks were showing up, and I think we will see more of that in the general election. So if they have put up a man against the AG, he would get squashed. Yeah. I don't see anybody being able to beat that dynamic.
I love being just called their candidate, not a man, by the way.
I'm sorry, what? What'd you say, Tiff?
I said, didn't you just imply that the Republican candidate for AG is not a man?
No, I said, you said if they would have put, yeah.
Never mind. Charlie, I've got a question.
He, him, them. I don't know. He, him, them.
Charlie, I got a question.
There's absolutely, of course, nothing wrong with being a woman. It's just,
Well, DePerno is kind of weak.
Okay, now we're getting into dangerous territory, and we're talking about the crazy Republicans calling Pete Buttigieg a woman, which is 100% not okay. It is not an insult.
No, I just said he was weak. I didn't say he was a woman.
Charlie, I have a question for you. You interviewed Tudor Dixon. What was your impression? I think we don't have an idea who she really is, or did you have any impression after talking to
her? Personable, smart. Was probably the best candidate of the group. You know what I mean? She's not going to trip over herself in terms of, policy, because none of them have any policy. But is a novice, complete novice. And again, it was easy for the Republicans for 50 years to be, pro-life until you're faced with it. And then when you pull that under no circumstances should a woman have an abortion except for her life, doesn't play.
Right.
And she's been asked it a dozen times, but the way that the media does it is under no circumstances, absolutely no circumstance. It's boring. When you do regular people who live in the middle and you say something like, so a 14-year-old gets raped by her uncle and she's supposed to carry that and come to the family reunion, you support that. When you put it that way, well, then it really registers to people living real lives, because we understand that. You can't undo it. But I was outraged.
You're right about that.
The fact that the super PACs decided to steal my copyrighted material to place a $10 million ad buy, because Whitmer doesn't have to do anything. The Democratic Governors Association did it for her. And yet Whitmer doesn't have the guts to take one question from me. Not one. And what's sad about this election is we got garbage all across the board. We should be talking about nursing homes, the schools, what we did to children, the COVID response, the budget, inflation, Buttigieg. Do you think Stabenow is going to retire and Whitmer is going to name Buttigieg to the Senate? Is that possible?
Mm.
Oh,
I mean, there's so much going on, and all we got is this. It's too bad.
But
why does it have to be Buttigieg? Why can't it be?
Well, he's moved to Michigan now. But ML, let me ask you today. I think we have Donald Trump Jr. coming to town to campaign, and then we have Trump coming to Macomb County again. Is that only sink these guys further, or does it help to rally the base?
It might help them to raise some money, but going back to Whitmer, how does Whitmer lose? Is if she doesn't get people to vote, if people think this election's over. I mean, I can't tell you how many people came up to me after the city council election and said, man, I really supported you for city council. And I said, oh, I appreciate that. I said, did you vote? And they said, I really supported you for city council. It's like, well, if you didn't vote, then you really didn't support me. And that's where Whitmer has got to work on getting out the vote. That's where if there's a big surge and she gets her people to go to the polls, they will run all the way down that ticket for the Democrats, and you'll see the Democrats with a chance to take the state house. But Republicans vote, and that's the thing. If I could have one Christian coalition person who supported me versus 10 liberals, I know I'd have one vote. With 10 liberals, I don't know. There might be a tree that needs a hug between the poles in their house. So
what do we need to
ML, as an unapologetic liberal, I resent that bullshit you just said. You go out and vote because that's where you make the difference. And
I think
we're both unapologetic liberals, but he's right.
He's not right. He might be right for some of you white people who can afford to sit your ass on the sideline and not do anything.
Wait a minute. We agree on virtually every issue. I think I'm probably farther to the left than anybody on this panel, but
I'd agree with that.
It is a truism. It is simply a truism to say that we liberals tend to vote less than these Christian conservatives. They have figured that part out. It's like arguing with ourselves. Will Rogers said it a long time ago, and he was right. I'm not a member of any organized political party. I'm a Democrat. The fact of the matter is that the Republicans believed what Reagan said. The 11th Amendment, never speak badly about another Republican. And that system has worked. The Republicans generally stand for nothing that the majority of this country stands for, but they vote way more than Democrats do, which is why they hold these offices.
And if I can remind people,
we should be embarrassed by that fact.
Let's remind people, you don't have to go to the polls. You can call your clerk, your local clerk. You can email them, and they will send you an absentee ballot application that you don't even have to go to the polls. Let's remember that. That's part of the.
I've been getting.
Not only is that
let me say this, Bill. You're kicking around a lot of stereotypes, man, and I don't think that is fair. And I do, but I will. Why what? Saying white people,
Charlie, I can use Greg.
First world problems, and I do apologize for Chris, and I didn't really mean to, but sometimes I get around ML and I just can't help myself, and Charlie at the same time. So, but what I am saying is that, Bill, that I grew up understanding that you have to go vote. The 1965 Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, all those things happened right before I was born. And so, the idea that somehow we can take it for granted, particularly if you're a liberal and you're woke and you understand the history of things and the struggle and how you had to count jelly beans just to be able to vote, to say that, we don't get out there and do that, those of us who are part of this because you're liberal, it's just not true. And the reason why the Republicans, and we've seen this, Charlie, you've written stories about it, and Mel, you've written stories about it, Al, you've written stories about it, about the way that they pack the districts and shape the districts that allow for them to have an advantage. So you had fewer people voting, but making a bigger impact on the 10 million people in the state. So, I mean, I'm not going to say
that doesn't apply statewide, and turnout in Detroit is terrible. The most liberal place in the most liberal large city in the state, our turnout lags behind the rest of the state. in 2020, Donald Trump got 5,000 more votes in Detroit than he did in 2016.
That's true.
I'm telling you, liberals and people who have been disenfranchised are taking the franchise for advantage. And while people are trying to steal it in Florida, Texas, and Georgia, we're sitting here letting it evaporate in our hand like it's rubbing alcohol. I can feel it. My hand's drying as we speak.
You know, I've been following this for a long time, and I remember after the last election, we had some Yahoo young kid, I don't know, 25 if he was 22, come down to Detroit and tell us it was our fault that that we did not sweep the House and the Senate last time because not enough people turned out. And what you don't see is you should be mindful of is that the migration patterns and have flowed out of Detroit, and you've seen that bump happen in Oakland County. Now, where do you think those people came from? That were, you know, Oakland County was red, but now it's blue. They came from Detroit. And so the thought that liberals
Detroit don't vote anymore, I don't get that.
No. It's not that people left in Detroit don't vote anymore. I'm saying there used to be a time where you would wait for the Detroit vote to come in, and it would be this big wave and this big push that would flip elections. And that's why Engler won, because that push didn't happen. But since that time, that push, that wave has been trickling out following the migration patterns to Oakland County. And I'm using that by way of example. And the evidence is of how Oakland has gone from red to blue.
And don't you find it interesting?
So Oakland is actually the most populous, you know, the area now. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry, Charlie.
But isn't it, you're talking about the Voting Rights Act in Detroit. Don't you find it interesting with the new voting districts, how Detroit's sort of been gerrymandered out of any sort of Detroit representation? They call Detroit a wasted vote. That's the actual literal term, because Detroit will vote 95% Democratic. So why don't we create a wagon wheel out of that, spoke it out, and like my state senator, she represents everything from Birmingham, Clawson, Royal Oak, Pleasant Ridge, Ferndale to Dexter and Puritan. Like, what kind of district is that? So
that's Stephanie Chang?
Huh?
No,
Is that
Mallory?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Charlie, to that point, I think we're in an experiment here. You know, we had the Citizens Redistricting Council that, you know, it was a nonpartisan issue, you know, and they did something different than has ever been done. And that it's not an issue that's just applied to Detroit. There are many communities throughout the state that were previously represented by a single person and are now divided into multiple, you know, state legislative or state Senate seats. So I think we're going to see what happens.
There's a challenge. It's going to court because Detroit's not happy.
Let's speak plainly here, people. Y'all not speaking plainly. You're speaking in code. You're talking about Detroit, and you're talking about we're talking about the black vote being diluted. And part of the challenge that we have had, all of us on this panel, you know, is that we do not discuss race plainly and openly. And what has occurred is that we have allowed other rising communities of color to be represented at the expense of black votes and black representation. So I ain't got nothing against my Indian brothers and sisters or my Asian brothers and sisters or any of those folks. But what you've seen is that they've increased in representation and black representation has not. And we did not have that discussion during redistricting to make sure that all the different communities have, you know, a fair opportunity to have representation. And when it comes to the way that things have been split up, come on, guys, all the problems that we face are no longer stopping problems at 8 Mile or Alta Road. We have these problems that cross these geographical boundaries that can only be solved, I think, by having representation for both. And the way the Republicans packed black folks in the city was to isolate black people, Detroiters, from everybody else, and you could never really get to the issues. So if you want to talk about crime, if you want to talk about education, then guess what? East Point has a struggling education system like Detroit does. And if you have representation in Detroit and in East Point, then maybe you finally can do something about getting those people who are struggling economically a fair shake at an education. So I'm just not crying too much about Detroit being broken up, because anything that the Republicans have done, they have never done anything good for Black people ever. And packing all the Black people in Detroit had nothing to do with fairness or equity.
Let's go to ML. ML's got something to say.
I was just going to say that all sounds good, but I think those Black folks in Oakland County are going to get police response a lot faster than those Black folks who live next door to me. And guess what? Guess what? My state senator lived a block away from me. My state senator now is going to be from Warren. My state rep lived in my neighborhood. Now my state rep's, I think, going to be from Hamtramck. And the one who represents somebody 2 blocks away from me is from St. Clair Shores.
Huh.
So, well, you know what? Hamtramck has more in common with the poorer neighborhoods around you than the street you live on, ML. So this is not to,
it's still 15 minutes away from my crib.
It's still 15 minutes away from your crib.
And all I know
so is Northwest Detroit.
Before the redistricting, we had 2 majority Black congressional districts, and now we have 0. And now you're not going to have any Black representation in Congress unless it's the Republican John James out of Macomb, who hasn't even bothered to move to Macomb yet. He's still in Farmington Hills. And if you vote for me, maybe I'll move. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Man, Rashida Tlaib ain't Black, and she got elected out of that district. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
before that, it was Hanson Clark.
You're the one that wrote the story, which was she wouldn't have got elected if like 5 other Black people would have got out of the way, but they didn't. That's how that happened.
Well, I know you're right. I mean, we got.
And where's the beef? Bring some beef back here. Like ML saying, there's no fucking police.
Well, that's why that's apparently why the Council of Baptist Pastors supported Rashida Tlaib, because they felt like that she was bringing home the bacon over everybody else, even though she's not Black. And that was
I disagree with the pastors, because I actually keep track of this shit. Maybe the pastors got their pockets lined, but I certainly don't see it in the city.
I don't think they got it. Well, anyway, I hear you.
All right.
I hear you, my brother.
Okay, we're going to go to, I'm going to do a real quickie here. I don't know if anyone saw the Ken Burns special on PBS. It was on the U.S. and the Holocaust. And I have a particular interest since my parents are Holocaust survivors. Basically, a lot of it was about how the U.S. had kept out European Jews because Roosevelt was worried about the high level of anti-Semitism. He was worried that people were going to freak out if there were too many Jews here. And I thought, I mean, it was the thing. A couple things that stuck out to me. One was that we always think of the Germans as just following orders, that they were really, begrudgingly killing the Jews. And there were scenes where they showed German soldiers like putting bullets in the back of heads of the Jews and smiling, and others had their little video cameras and taking pictures to send back to their families to show them the work that they were doing, which I thought was obviously appalling. But the other interesting thing was that in the 30s, there was a movement in the U.S. There was a big, at Madison Square Gardens, they had a big convention to talk about the treatment of the Jews in Germany, and the U.S. filed a formal complaint with Germany, saying we don't like the way you're treating the Jews. And Germany's response was, "What about Mississippi? What about the drinking fountains, the lynchings, and all that kind of stuff?" And they said, "You see the blacks as inferior. We see the Jews as inferior. Don't tell us how to treat our inferior race." I don't know.
The Nazis learned how to do their stuff from good old-fashioned American racism.
Yep.
That they came here and they studied it. That's a bona fide fact.
Yep. So
unfortunately,
they never adopted the one-drop democracy, because you got January 6th.
Yep. And then at the end of the whole documentary, they show January 6th. They show Charlottesville, Virginia. or Charlotte, whatever, where they were chanting, "The Jews will not replace us." Mm-hmm. And then they showed at the January 6th riots, they had people in the Auschwitz, Camp Auschwitz sweatshirts, and it's pretty chilling. It was pretty chilling for me. So I don't know.
Allan, I want to say one thing. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I know it was on PBS earlier this week, and when reading about it, the one thing I was really glad to see is that along with the release of this mini documentary series, they have a huge educational package that they're providing to schools to go along with that. And I think that is really key for these sorts of conversations. Right. I do worry like that when it becomes Tiffany. A tool for Republicans to argue that PBS should be defunded. But, I think it's incredibly important that we have those conversations, both in society and particularly with our kids.
Right. Right.
I hope those books
will be banned in Florida.
Yeah. When
I couldn't hear what ML said. What did he say?
Yeah, ML and then Bill.
I said I hope those books won't be banned because they mention gay people.
Right.
Yeah. ML and I were on the same page. I said I am sure the material would be banned in Florida.
I said it for less than an hour though.
It's
much lower.
It's interesting. We can't, there's a whole thing about, educating the kids today about, slavery and all that kind of stuff. It's like, we have some shameful moments or periods, I shouldn't say moments, in our country. And there's nothing the kids can do about it, but they can recognize when something is happening, when the seeds, like Hitler, when you watch the rise of Hitler, it was just a slow rise, but it was steady. And we have to recognize fascism in the world in different ways. So anyways, it's time we're going to get to the schmuck of the week.
Right, and because I'm dealing with schmucks all my life, I know who a schmuck is, and I know the difference between a real schmuck, a plain schmuck, and just a plain regular schmuck.
Okay, Charlie, you want to go first? You got a schmuck of the week? Anybody?
I'm prepared for this. Nobody sent me the show notes, bro.
Okay, I did.
Think of one real quick.
All right, we'll get to you. Okay,
Charlie is the man. I love you, man.
Tiffany.
Oh, I'm up first? All right. Well, there's so much. The news is so depressing these days. And, as we just discussed for an hour, it's somewhat overwhelming, I think. So my schmuck is a little bit more lighthearted this week. I'm going to go with Adam Levine, who was cheating on his wife, allegedly, with another model and broke it off and allegedly wanted to name his child with his wife after the former mistress.
Oh, wow.
So, it's Hollywood, people have affairs, things like that. But the frustrating thing to me now is that Adam Levine's songs and Maroon 5 songs are now among the most streamed that are